What's up, everybody? This is Nick Scripp, NFL content lead for Fantrax on the P2W Fantasy podcast affiliated with the Fantrax brand, Fantrax channels. I said the other day, the podcast is back. The live streams are going to be more consistent. It's Thursday. I said that on Tuesday, so I'm a man of my word here. So what we have going on today, we're talking 2024 fantasy football wide receiver targets outside the top 24. So outside the top 24 drafted wide receivers to target in your fantasy football drafts. It's easy to talk about the Amon-Ra St. Browns and A.J. Browns and Puka Nakuas and Marvin Harrison Jr.'s. Let's go outside the top 24 and talk about guys you should try to target in your drafts this season. So excited about this episode. Go tell your friends, hey, Nick's live here on the P2W Fantasy Podcast, and it's going to be a good episode. Let's get it.
I play to win, no fear to give. I feel, but I can't forgive. I go all in this time, yeah, I won't regret. I'll pick the best, don't trip, they don't understand. I play to win, yeah, I play to win, I play to win. Yeah, I play to win, I play to win. Oh, play to win, I play to win. Yeah, I play to win, I play to win.
All right, so talking the wide receivers here to target outside. Hang on, my headphones got all sorted. All right, we're good. Talking the wide receivers to target outside the top 24. So these are guys being drafted outside the top 24 wide receivers that I feel like you guys should target in your fantasy football drafts. Starting off with Zay Flowers being drafted as the wide receiver 25. Zay Flowers led the Ravens this past season in targets, receptions, and receiving yards as a first-round rookie. Yes, Mark Andrews did suffer an injury that cut his season short, but Zay did out-target Andrews on a per-game basis, 6.8 to 6.1. Flowers finished 15th for the position in yards after the catch, showing his playmaking ability. He averaged 12.9 fantasy points per game, which ranked 31st, but he was very hot towards the end of the season across his last 5 final games. 19 plus fantasy points in 4 of those 5 final games, 3 top 12 performances for the position. And then you look at the playoffs. Through the 2 playoff games, Zay was the focal point of the Ravens offense. He finished catching 9 of his 13 targets for 156 receiving yards and a touchdown in those 2 games. To create a perspective here, Flowers accounted for 36.79% of the team's receiving yards in those 2 games. Lamar Jackson, very encouraging, finished 2023 with career highs in passing attempts, 457, and passing yards with 3,678. I think Zay, what he did at the end of last season, we're talking those final 5 games, we're talking the NFL playoffs, can carry over into a sophomore season. I think he can build off of it and have a true breakout year. Jayden Reed's being drafted as the wide receiver 35 right now. He was a second-round rookie last season. He tied on the team for first in targets per game. He led Green Bay in receiving yards. He led the receiving room in total touchdowns with 10. For the position, Reed finished 16th in slot snaps, number 27 in yards after the catch, number 27 in yards per route run, number 3 in rushing yards, number 26 in fantasy points per game. Finishing near the top 24 as a rookie wide receiver should be talked about a little bit more. It could be a sign of what is to come even more for Jayden Reed in the future. And Jordan Love had a very nice first season in the NFL, 4,159 passing yards, 32 passing touchdowns. He got paid a lot of money this offseason. I think he elevates the people around him, and he had a nice connection with Jayden Reed. I think he's the most versatile wide receiver on the roster when we look at him versus Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs and Dontavian Wicks and Bo Melton. He can line up in the slot. He can line up out wide. He can play like a Debo role where he's running the ball. He extends plays after the catch. He displayed touchdown upside. Finishing 26th in fantasy points per game as a rookie is a great start to his fantasy football tenure. I expect the connection with Love to expand in his sophomore season. George Pickens is being drafted as the wide receiver 26 right now. Here's some 2023 and 2022 ranks that display upside. Number 10 and number 7 in deep targets. Number 19 and number 3 in average depth of his targets. Number 18 and number 19 in air yards. Number 16 in yards after the catch this past season. Number 5 and number 14 in yards per target. Number 1 and number 12 in yards per reception. 1,140 receiving yards this past season. Look at some of these weeks. 127 yards week 2. 130 yards week 5, 195 yards week 16, 131 yards week 17. So he's a big play wide receiver, and I think he's going to have more opportunities to make more big plays in 2024. He has now 1 but 2 quarterback upgrades in Pittsburgh with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. They address the offensive line via the first, second, and fourth rounds of the 2024 NFL Draft. He's the default wide receiver 1 now with no Deontay Johnson, so those targets should go up. I think it's a plus for him and Pat Freiermuth, Deontay Johnson's departure. So look for him to see 120-plus targets and, again, give a big play guy more opportunities to make more big plays. Terry McLaurin is being drafted as the wide receiver 32, down 2023 ranking. When it came to fantasy points per game, he ranked 34th. It was his 4th straight season, though, over 1,000 receiving yards in 5th through 7 seasons. He's never finished with under 919 receiving yards. He's a target earner, hasn't always had tons of competition, but he's had 130-plus targets in 4 seasons. Wide receiver 22, wide receiver 29, wide receiver 20, wide receiver 29, and wide receiver 20 in fantasy points per game the 5 seasons prior to 2023. Number 2 overall pick, Jayden Daniels, is hyped for what he can do with his legs, but he's coming off of a season through 12 games where he threw for 3,812 yards and 40 passing touchdowns. That's a nice passing resume out of Jayden Daniels, and I think he can elevate Terry McLaurin in 2024. Marquise Brown, wide receiver 1 for me in 2024 for the Chiefs. What you like about Rashee Rice and what you like about Xavier Worthy are present in a healthy Marquise Hollywood Brown. Across the last 4 seasons, Marquise Brown has averaged 7.81 targets per game. Rashee Rice earned 6.4 targets per game this past season, so that shows he's a target earner. Hollywood has been targeted deep 20-plus times via Player Profiler for 4 straight seasons, and we view Xavier Worthy as this deep threat. So what we like out of 2 guys on the roster in Kansas City is very present in Marquise Brown. And then you have the Patrick Mahomes factor, which speaks for itself. Ladd McConkey is being drafted as the wide receiver 41 right now. Round 2, pick 2 selection in 2024 by the Chargers. I don't know if you could have found a better landing spot for a wide receiver, seeing as though all of Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, and Gerald Everett are out of LA. All right, let's start that one over right there. Hold up. Ladd McConkey, round 2, pick 2 selection by the Chargers. Don't think you could have chalked up a better landing spot for a wide receiver in this year's NFL draft. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, and Gerald Everett are all out of LA. He didn't have the stats that popped necessarily out of Georgia, but he profiles as an effective route runner at all 3 levels. 4.39 40-yard dash speed, emphasizes he's much more than just a typical slot guy. He's a very athletic slot wide receiver, and he's competent just making the plays. Justin Herbert averaged 35.1 passing attempts per game last season, and he's had heavy numbers through the air through his career. There is an emphasis that Jim Harbaugh will push the run game, but I doubt that LA just abandons Justin Herbert from slinging the ball. I think Ladd is in a very average wide receiver room, and I think he could be the wide receiver 1 as a rookie for Justin Herbert, which would have huge fantasy football translations. Jalen Polk, 1,159 receiving yards and 9 touchdowns in his final Washington season in 2023 with Rome Odunze on the field as his teammate. He lands in New England via the 2nd round. The first move that the Patriots made after drafting Drake May in the 1st round was drafting Jalen Polk in the 2nd round. And these two were just like chilling at a hockey game this offseason, already building their connection. I think he is the only wide receiver on the roster in New England that profiles as a potential one. He has the size and body control to go up and win. He's highly committed to his routes. He's focused on finishing the deep plays. He puts in effort blocking. He is absolutely smoking camp right now. For me, he is the next Jayden Reed, Rashee Rice for fantasy football, a.k.a. a second-round rookie who lands in a nice opportunity, yet he doesn't get the hype for fantasy football before the season, but he ends up balling out. He's been a guy that I've been trying to get in all of my rookie drafts and dynasty leagues, and I am going to target him in redraft, especially seeing that his price tag right now is wide receiver 72. Brian Thomas Jr. is being drafted as the wide receiver 48. He led the FBS in receiving touchdowns this past season with 17, and he produced 1,177 receiving yards with Malik Nabers as his teammate on the field. He uses his 6'3" size to his advantage. He has strong stop and start, quality acceleration, and top speed. It means he could be a deep threat. He has the body control to go up for catches. Maybe he trails both Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram in targets this year, but I think Trevor Lawrence was desperate for some actual upside in a weapon. I think Thomas Jr. is the only player on the roster that could be a future wide receiver one that has the sort of tools to be that. Coming off of 21 passing touchdowns, I think adding a guy in the first round that has proven to be a touchdown scorer was a great move by the Jaguars, and I really like this landing spot for Brian Thomas Jr. Jackson Smith-Njigba is being drafted as the wide receiver 45. I, like many, love JSN as a prospect. We often forget that he outproduced Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave on the same Ohio State team in 2021. His snap percentage finally jumped after the Week 5 bye his rookie season last year. The fact that he earned nearly 100 targets at 93 with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett is not talked about enough. No other rookies last season had that sort of target competition in DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. JSN finished number 21 in yards after the catch, despite ranking 95th in the average depth of his target, which shows that he is a playmaker with the ball in his hands. Flashes of fantasy production as a rookie, but I think 2024 could be the actual jump in what he does for fantasy football for JSN, who I think spends much more time on the field, and I think he creates a true 1-2 punch with DK Metcalf, and Tyler Lockett becomes the complement piece of the offense. Last guy on my list here, Jerry Jeudy is being drafted as the wide receiver 52. Back in 2022, not super long ago, 13.6 fantasy points per game, ranked 19th, 15 appearances. But if we look at the 11 games he played, 60% plus of the snaps, he averaged 17-ish fantasy points per game. That season, he was 12th in deep targets, 16th in yards after catch. He averaged 64.8 receiving yards per game. We've seen flashes of Jerry Jeudy, but the impacts of health and the asterisks in Denver have always held him back. If Deshaun Watson bounces back to form, which I am projecting he does, I think we can see a very useful fantasy season out of Jerry Jeudy if he can just stay on the field. This could be the career turnaround for him in Cleveland with likely the best quarterback he's ever had. I've always been a believer in the talent. I think 2024 is truly do or die for Jerry Jeudy, and I think he is going to be a nice flex option in lineups. So, quick recap for guys I like. Outside the top 24 for fantasy football, Zay Flowers, Jayden Reed, George Pickens, Terry McLaurin, Marquise Brown, Ladd McConkey, Jalen Polk, Brian Thomas Jr., JSN, and Jerry Jeudy. So there's plenty of other guys that I can plug. I wanted to be sure to talk about these specific guys on today's episode. Hopefully you can walk away with something from this and at least 2-3 guys from this list that you say, hey, you know what? At cost, I think these guys are good targets for fantasy football this coming season. Appreciate you guys tuning in. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, or if you've listened to it off and on, be sure you are following or subscribe to where this comes out. It's live on the Fantrax social, Twitter, or X page. It's going to be on the YouTube channel for Fantrax, or on iTunes. Just look up P2W Fantasy and subscribe to the podcast there. Appreciate you guys listening, and let's win some fucking championships this year.